Hey, hey, welcome to another episode. I am Dagny.
Hello, I am Damali.
And in this episode, we want to share with you our experience living and working abroad. As you might already know, both of us are born and raised in the US. And currently,
Yes.
both of us are living and working in a completely different continent and different country.
Yes.
So we wanted to share. Yes, another planet. So we wanted to share our experience of what we've learned navigating these adventures. So to start,
Yes.
I'd like to ask you, Damali, let's open up with sharing one of the biggest things you've learned about yourself while navigating this adventure, living and working abroad.
All right. Okay. Yeah, well, one thing I guess is I'm kind of brave. I think that's the one biggest thing. I'm very brave. Sometimes I don't think I give myself enough credit for that. And I don't always realize it, but I was quite brave. I kind of should we reveal the countries that we are in?
I think they would want to know. I think so.
Just like some random place no one knows.
Random. It's just next door to where you've always lived all your life. No.
Yes. No big deal. Under a rock. No,
Yes.
we're originally from America. Yes, but I am living in China right now. And I am working in China. And so that obviously is very far away from America. It's like 13, 14 hours difference, right? And yeah, so that's one big thing I would say. I'm very brave. I'm here. I did it on my own kind of thing. And it took a while to get here because of everyone was around during the pandemic, right? So it kind of took a while to come over here. But yeah, I was very brave. And apparently I can do things outside of my comfort zone, and I am still around to tell the tale. So that's always great. So yeah, I think bravery is one thing I think I would share. Yeah. And then what about you? What's one thing you would share, Dagny?
I like that. So I'm gonna add brave to mine. Totally not copying, I promise. But
oh right.
But it's true. Like, yeah, I am legit. And I too have sometimes forgotten to give myself credit for that because I think once you're in it, you're just going with what's in front of you or dealing with what's in front of you. And actually it's like, no, you really moved out to a place that really is not an environment you're used to at all.
Oh, right. Your location.
My bad. I am in Ghana. I have been living and working abroad in Ghana now for 5 years. And yes, giving myself credit of like, yo, you did this. Like you did it and you survived to tell the tale. And you actually have figured out a way to enjoy it on my own terms, which is actually not easy. And I think that it's true that we do need to pat ourselves on the back more, those of us who do something like this, because we really are, I feel we really are pioneers choosing to really completely change the landscape of our lives by choosing to go on adventures like this.
Definitely. Yeah. And one of the reasons we wanted to talk about this is that we're kind of at different points of the journey. Dagny has been in Ghana for about 5 years. For me, this is officially my first year of working, the first time working in a different country. So thought it would be cool to share different perspectives and some same perspectives about living abroad.
So let's go with navigating. Since we're talking about working first, let's go with navigating work culture, work ethics, work expectations in these different countries. Yes. So I'll let you start first in terms of, because it's fresh in your mind more since it's like you've been on the probation period and had the tears and then got past the probation period because like they didn't kick you out yet. So how has navigating a different work environment been compared to your frame of reference, which is the work environment in the US?
I guess the first I'll start with is the bank, actually. Like setting up a bank account and getting an apartment Very different here than in America, I have found, obviously. So that took some time because obviously it's very different to set it up here than in America. And then looking, because in America, I guess it's my home, so it's easier for me to know like what websites to use or who to ask or where to go to look for places to live and things like that. Whereas here, I'm not as comfortable with it. I didn't know the area as well. So of course that was definitely a big, that took a lot. There were definitely some tears at the end of that because it was such a stressful thing that I thought would be easier than it was. Um, Also, yeah, setting up a bank account, and even getting like a bank app also takes much longer time. The first time to just set up the account, I went with my other coworkers or higher up employees, so it was easier because they helped me set it up. But the next time I went to set up the bank app, I went by myself, and although I know enough Chinese to get around, but it still took a very long time at the bank. It took like I don't know 2-3 hours or something like that of time, and a lot of it was a lot of back and forth and trying my best to communicate as best I can. Whereas in America, it wouldn't take as long for me, right? Because obviously I'm already, I'm from there. I was born there, so it's very different. Um, Also, even the stuff before, when it comes to getting like a visa and getting all of that stuff, I'm sure everyone is aware that that can also take a very long time, to figure that all out. And of course, in light of the pandemic situation, it caused other hurdles that might not have been there before. Um, and yeah, and then yeah, so settling in there. Let me see another big thing. Oh yeah, the metro. Figuring out the metro and the subway. I think that was a big deal.
And then in terms of,
where we live in. Oh,
sorry.
go ahead.
Also, and then, but also add in
Yeah.
terms of work culture, in terms of dealing with fellow employees or dealing with who you are, the expectations that you've learned with the company you're working with.
Yeah, right. Okay, yeah. So aside from those are the smaller ones of like, figuring out like the metro, and because where we live, there isn't a metro or subway station. So of course, dealing with that when there's like 15 different subway lines took a very long time also. And then being at work, how many years? It's been a few years that I worked in America, like face to face, obviously. So this is like before the pandemic. And yeah, the work environment is very different. Obviously the language is there. Not only the language barrier, but just like I guess like nuances or certain like I guess I can say social cues, right? Because you're in a different country, so the way people interact with you and react to you is very different. And sometimes you don't know if it's the language that is it or the difference in culture or things like that. Whereas I feel like back in America, it's obviously it's different because everyone's American, so the way you react with everyone is kind of different. And so getting used to that, or if I'm asking certain questions and like especially if it's through text messages and things, and being like, and maybe I like they like I was told one thing and then I didn't fully, and then I understood the information differently, kind of thing. So kind of getting used to that. I mean, for me, I've been lucky. My work area is quite nice. Everyone there is quite nice and helpful. I've heard horror stories for other people, but for me, it's been very nice. And I think I've gotten better with things like time management. I've gotten better at that. Dealing with the way the work schedule is. The work schedule is definitely a difference for me. Because at my job that I had in America, it was a usual like 8 to 5 job, right? Whereas for this one, it can sometimes be from 2 p.m. to 8 p.m. or like 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. So obviously that kind of changes my my sleep cycle and my whole day. And then also back when I was in America, I had Saturday and Sunday off, whereas here I have Tuesday and Wednesday off. So that obviously is very, very different. So yeah, so those are some highlights I would give for the difference in working here. Dagny, what about you?
I would say for me, I think expectations as well as office cues and social cues were and possibly still are, a learning curve for me. So first starting out, I was working in an office environment, and coming from what I was used to, where what's on paper is exactly what we're doing, what's said is exactly what we're doing, and there's a system and there's protocol and things like that. While then coming here, where there's a bit of fluidity in that, where even though that's what's on paper, that's what was said, you're also supposed to understand that because they said it in this way, or because their title is this, you should have taken it a certain way or should have internalized it differently of what they actually were asking for or not. And so and that included also time frame of like how quickly or how slow you're supposed to do certain things, not because the item should be done, but because that also reflects on the person who asked for it. These sort of things that really took me a bit to understand or try to at least chip away at a little bit. So initially, of course, being the way my personality is set up, initially I would take it personally, like, oh my goodness, I must be doing something wrong if this is the reactions I'm getting. When actually not that necessarily I'm doing something wrong, it's just I'm still operating in a different system in my head compared to what they want or what they're expecting. And so that was a good learning experience for me, because then I got a better understanding of what are the priorities for people here compared to how we build our priorities in an office environment in the US, where it's like, no, you just deliver it immediately and keep it going. And we don't, not that we're machines, or maybe we kind of pretend to be machines. Indeed. But it's just it's very different dynamic of whether you really are more people oriented or not, or whether what you want to be delivered has more to do with respect than the product, or it's more to do with it should just be done as opposed for it to be complete. Like there's different layers of nuances like that, which was a bit confusing at times for me. But it was helpful to get a sense of, okay, there is space to contribute, and there is space to expand in this if you can be confident regardless if you understand all of it or not, kind of thing. So that's why for me, pivoting into years later now, pivoting into doing my own thing and building a business here is like, well, it's thanks to the experiences of trying to understand what are people's priorities here, what are their time expectations here, not necessarily to always be fighting with them, but to understand how can you work with those strengths, collaborate with those strengths, while also still contributing the legitness that I can bring as well, because I also have experience within a different system too. So it's been an interesting, like, I don't know if it's like a science project or a magical formula to create those different things that I think a lot of times looking on the outside looking in, you don't see it happening. But when you're in it, it's very obvious that like, oh, there's actually a lot of different nuances that are foreign to each other, trying to collaborate to get something done. So that has been, navigating that has been an adventure in itself, and has helped me figure a better way of dealing with how to set my own expectations while still delivering what needs to be delivered.
Yes. And to piggyback off of that,
yes.
we're always piggybacking. It's definitely a different work culture. I know that back in America, one of the jobs I had, I tried to do some like overtime, work, and it was kind of met with like they're wondering like, why are you here? Like, why are you doing more work than you need to do? Like, can you leave? Like, kind of situation in other jobs I've had. Whereas here in China, it seems like it's kind of expected that you'll do overtime. Like like whenever I'm at my job, like it's work is done, and yet like there's still 3 people that are still in the office, still working, and everyone is still working, and no one's leaving on time. Like very rarely, everyone's always doing more than they have to, kind of thing. And people bringing stuff, they're like, oh yeah, I'm going to do my work when I'm on the subway. going home, or like, things like that. And I even in the beginning too, I would be bringing work home and doing it and stuff. And then also back in America too, it was kind of like after 5 p.m., like that's kind of, no one really calls you that much, or for my job anywhere. It was kind of like you're not really, after 5 p.m.'s done, boom, leave me alone, I'm gone, kind of thing. Whereas here, there's a lot of people, it'll be after hours and people are asking, oh, do we have this? Are we doing this? Oh, remember tomorrow we're doing this, kind of thing. Like it's an ongoing work situation. So it's interesting seeing the different ways that everyone works, and it's kind of and some of that happened to me in the beginning too, where it was kind of like, oh, can you, like I have the boss, like when I didn't know, like the boss is like, oh, in China, like, oh, can you do this job, or can you do this work or something? And she had asked me, the way she had asked me, I thought it was like a suggestion, like I could opt out kind of thing, but apparently it wasn't that. And she goes like, oh, can you do this? And I was like, oh, I don't know. And I was like, that seems very late for me, I don't think I can. And then like, looking back now, I noticed that everyone in the office kind of like paused when I said that, like the reaction. And I'm like, I don't know, I just got here,
Right.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then they're like, okay, maybe we can find someone else to do it. And then like later, she was like, oh no, they canceled. So yeah, Damali, you're gonna have to do it. And I was like, oh, okay. And then I find out later that that's normal. Like the it doesn't matter about the time. Like if they say to do it, you just do it, kind of thing, regardless. Also, sometimes weekends you think are free, and then turns out you need to work on a weekend too, kind of thing, and do an hour of work to do something else. Whereas I feel like I didn't have that as much in the specific job I had back in America. So so kind of what I've learned is just kind of I ask more questions more. Like I kind of try to ask them, oh, is this what you meant, kind of thing. And also another difference I noticed was that in my job in America, we use like email a lot more. Like most of the information was via email, right? Whereas here in China, even though I have my email, most of the time we use WeChat. I don't know. Well, if you don't know, WeChat is it's kind of like I guess like it's kind of like a mixture of like Facebook, and then also a mixture of like iMessage as well,
or WhatsApp?
Kind of thing.
No?
Yeah, or WhatsApp. Yes, it's like WhatsApp where you can send messages, texts, call.
But it's also a social media thing too. Yeah.
Social media app as well. And most of the information is on WeChat. So like there's like all these different group chats, and they're all on WeChat, and that's how you contact people. And you don't know what everyone's phone number is, because it's all on WeChat. Right. So of course, I've gotten much better. I mean, you definitely will know WeChat really well if you work in China. That's what it seems like for me. So that also is another thing that was kind of like just something to get used to, and just like, oh, I have to do this work too. Oh, I have to do this after work also. Okay, cool. Kind of thing.
And that's a great way to connect to the next question.
Oh, segue.
Focusing more on lifestyle. In terms of navigating, how has your lifestyle changed for the better or for the worse or for the improvements in terms of living and working abroad?
Right.
I would say, should I start?
Yeah, you can go ahead and start. What have your lifestyle changes been, Dagny? Good, bad, or improving?
Right. I feel like since living here, I've become more present and minimalistic compared to before moving here. I feel like, and I think that's not only, I don't know if that's solely due to the country or just being outside of the US or outside of the West, because comparing in the US, my lifestyle would be, okay, yeah, you're doing work or you're doing classes, and the in-between time, if you're not going out, is, well, let me stop by Tuesday morning and see if there's anything there I can just pick up. And Tuesday morning is one of those stores where there's a lot of like knick-knack type stuff that is not expensive price-wise. So that's where you can get a journal, get a pillow, get a little figurine to put in that one particular corner that already has stuff in that corner. Or, let me just check on ASOS.com and see if they have anything new that would catch my eye. I'm not going anywhere, but let me just see, like there was this like, how do I put it? This pattern or habit of just filling time or space with either spending what you didn't need to spend or going to places that are kind of flat, but it's just to fill the time kind of thing. While I've noted since living here in Ghana, one, I don't be doing, well, there is no Tuesday morning out here, but you could still go to the Accra Arts Center, or there's different types of weekend markets for local businesses to get knickknacks like that if you wanted. But my desire for the knickknacks or the filling up space with knickknacks has disappeared, I feel. And instead, more of my time is more, can I say, blended, in that it's not about, oh, I'm depriving myself of what I enjoy for later because I'm supposed to always be busy. Instead, which I think comes a little bit with the work ethic here of, no, we're going to actually live our lives now, not always be busy and stressed and hyperventilating and beating ourselves up for something later, regardless of economic status. And so I've noted how I think actually I'm healthier, since living here because of that. And being able to have more of a hybrid way of the way I work. My lifestyle is one that I'm continuing to build a life that I don't necessarily need escapism from or vacation from. It's like, no, it's built into the lifestyle to enjoy different aspects of it, regardless of you work hard, play hard, smart hard, whatever the different terms are, sort of thing. And I love that. I do love that for me because it feels more fulfilling. I think it also provides me more space to I feel more like comfortable and more cozy in myself, in my body.
Cozy. Beyonce.
There you go.
Cozy.
And I really do appreciate that. So it has changed. It's been different. But I think it's for good reasons. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's cool. Yeah, yeah. I think for me, I don't know, but maybe it's just an age thing. I'm just getting old, guys.
Wow.
I guess because when I was younger, like before the pandemic, I could run. I'm just kidding. Okay. But no, before in my for my old job in America, I would like be able to. I think I went out a lot more in my old job in America. I would like go out. I would either go out to like I don't know, sometimes go to a club somewhere, or go for drinks, or go to a meetup somewhere, or go speed dating, or like, I don't know, just any kind of like, I was just finding all these things to do. Like, oh, they're going to the club, I'll do that. Oh, they're going to do a cooking class. Okay, I'm doing, all this stuff, and always having something to do, always going somewhere, even if maybe deep down it wasn't always what I wanted to do, right? And going with my, coworkers and things like that. And whereas in contrast to now, one, I'm really tired and older, so I don't think I can go out the way I used to, but I do think that the things I like to do are like different now. Like I'm not as interested as going to like a club or just dancing just because I like adventure more, like traveling. Like there was one time we went to climb a mountain, and so we went to go climb a mountain kind of thing, or went to this one like amusement park, or going to really cool restaurants. I love I'm really open to trying new foods and things like that, and thankfully I like the Chinese food, so I liked eating new things I haven't had before. So I love trying new foods, going mountain climbing. Well, I need to exercise more because that's really harder than it was when I was younger. Okay. Don't have as much energy. But yeah, I like those, like, and I like exploring. Like I like just walking or using my bicycle to go around just to see like new places kind of thing. And just like meeting people and just like talking about like anything, or one time I went with my coworkers to eat, I think it was, I don't know if it was hot. I don't know if it was hot pot or it was shao kao is how you call it, barbecue here. They're like Chinese barbecue. So you went to go eat and things like that. I don't need to. I'm not as interested in like going to like a club somewhere or like pick up this kind of thing. But I mean, I wish I had more of those instances. That this job is very it's keeping me very busy, kind of thing. And where I am in China is a very really big city, so everyone's really spread out. So sometimes we don't always have time to do things after, but when we do, it's really fun. So that's been good. In terms of the minimalist thing, I mean, I don't think I buy as much stuff, I guess, but also things are cheaper here, so it's actually easier to buy a lot of things. So I don't know if I do it as much, but I still have that habit of like they have like Taobao is like the equivalent of Amazon. So, and if Taobao is like Amazon, but it's cheaper, you know I'm going to be spending all my money. Like,
oh dear,
like, you know what I mean? So, you know, I would have to say I'm a little bit the opposite. I still will be like browsing on Taobao and just like, oh, maybe I need this fan. Oh, maybe I need this thing. Sometimes it does happen. But in terms of, I do save money in terms of clothes because I mean, you can't see me, but in China, obviously, the sizes tend to be smaller. You know, they tend to be smaller and thinner here, smaller, thinner, shorter sometimes. So sometimes with they don't really fit. Some of the clothes don't really fit me because I have a little bit more curves. Okay, but so that helps actually because I'm not buying a bunch of random clothes for no reason, kind of thing. And also I even though I do buy takeout, it's also not that expensive, so it doesn't take up that much of my money, kind of thing. In terms of I think I still have the escapism sometimes. I sometimes like to, you know, just like, oh, I feel like watching this show, or I feel like, you know, I'll just watch like 5 episodes, whatever. You know, with my anime or K-pop or movies or whatever. The thing is, though, I don't have as much time now as I did when, you know, I guess during pandemic time we had a little bit more free time, I think, right? Whereas now I'm more busy. But I do think that I still want to do things, but I think the types of things I want to do are different, or where I want to spend my time. I'm really into like learning new things and like meeting people from different places and being like, oh, why are you here? What are you doing here? Kind of thing. Especially if I see other like foreigners here too, where I'm like, oh, what are you doing? What's, you know, going on here? And then also, of course, trying to find different times to practice my Chinese. I know a conversational Chinese, but I'm not fluent, of course. So I'm always open to finding experiences where I can practice the language and get more. I don't want to just exist. I want to get more immersed, kind of thing, and learn more about the culture and the why they do this, or what does this mean, or what are these, like, you know, things they use, kind of thing. So I will say it's a different in that aspect, I think. I feel like it's true in America. I think sometimes it's very much like go, 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 go. Everything's so fast paced, and we're like, oh, we have to do this, and we have to do that, and we have to be, you know, all these things all the time. And I think it's just it's a little bit different. I think I feel like I don't know if I'm outside more here. I feel like because I'm walking. I guess. Well, also to add one more thing before we move on to the next point. In America, I kind of drove everywhere more. Where we are, it's kind of hard to walk all the time. So I'd be driving. I'm mostly driving like all the time. Whereas in China, there's no driving. Obviously, I don't have a car here, and I don't like. So all you have is there's walking, or there's a bicycle, or there's the metro, or there's the motorbikes, or the little electric bikes that they have. So mostly for me, it's and then there's the bus. So that I guess that's another difference, is that I use a lot of different modes of transportation while I'm in China. So that also changes the way that you view things around you, and obviously when you're not in a car, it's easier to find, oh wow, that looks cool. Oh, look at that store, or oh, I've never been there before. Let me go over there and check it out. Whereas in America, it's kind of you're in the car all the time, so sometimes it's harder to you know find things.
Well, in Texas, we're in the car all the time.
Yeah, let's say I feel like if we were in New York or California, it probably would be more of moving around. But in Texas, if you don't have a car, it's really hard. There's too many highways. Like you need a car, you know? So so that's definitely been a difference, I would say.
Would you say, in terms of your sense of
growth,
success, and sense of belief in self, do you feel like living and working abroad has influenced that at all?
Yeah, I definitely the world is obviously bigger than we thought it was. I mean it's the kind of thing where the world is big, there's all these places you can go, but sometimes you get stuck kind of
Mm-hmm.
thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember sometimes back when I was in America and like there were moments where I was like, "Oh, should I really be doing this?" or "Oh," like and you feel like this is I can only be here and I can't go anywhere else kind of thing. But then obviously I did go somewhere else, so that kind of, and the first, well, for me, before working here, I did like a study abroad program here. And I think that is where the big shift kind of started, because I was like, oh, so life can be like this too. This is kind of different. And then like meeting other people who also travel, who also know other languages, who also do different jobs and things, and kind of like opened things up for me a little bit. Like, oh, okay, this is a different way that people live. And I would be intrigued to try to, live that way. It doesn't come without its obstacles. And obviously, I think homesickness is something I'm used to homesickness, but once in a while, I'm like, I want to go back home. Like sometimes that does come, but I think that's just life. But for the most part, I do enjoy it. I do enjoy the new experience and doing something new. I want to travel even more. It makes me want to travel even more now. I want to see like more different places and meet more different types of people. Learn more languages at some point. And then also, as I've traveled, I also have met new like friends who also maybe are from different countries or from America, and they also have been traveling in Asia or other locations. So that's always kind of cool, where it's like all these, like if I hadn't traveled, then I wouldn't have made some of the friendships I made or some of the acquaintances I made. I would be like, I wouldn't have known you existed because I was like in one place. So I think it's open up in that way. And in terms of like my growth, yeah, the bravery thing, I think I'll go right back to that. Like clearly I, can do more than what I thought I could. And I've been able to branch out more and learn about more things, and things that maybe were really important to me before are not as important now. Um, and I'm trying. It doesn't always work, but I do try to be more present in what I'm doing, and kind of just focus on what you're doing now. And then action's a big thing. I try, if I find myself just thinking about, oh, I want to do this, I want to do that. Nope. Okay. Stop thinking, go act. Just go do something and then see what happens. Because sometimes you can think yourself out of something. Like you think you want to do something, and then all of a sudden you're like, never mind. So trying to do that more. But yeah, but it's definitely been a different experience. Being working somewhere else. I've never worked in a different country before, so it's definitely been a very eye-opening and interesting time. I will say, yeah.
I like how you mentioned the connections or potential connections as well. I think for me, one, yes, I think I've grown to be even more confident in taking risks. I think in terms of it's like, well, if you can make it work like this, then what's stopping you to go even further with any aspect of your life? Because you've now cracked the code of there actually is a lot of those limitations were in your mind.
Yes.
Sort of thing. Like, no, there's a way around all of that if you actually just act and show up, kind of thing. I do think in terms of connections or the social aspect, or if you ever truly will feel like you belong in the other country that you're living and working in, I feel for me, in my experience, I'm lucky that at least the culture of the country I'm in is it finds it very important to be polite, very important to greet everyone, very important to make everyone feel they are seen or included or accommodated for in some way. In addition to that, though, I have found that the experience you want abroad really has to be more focused on what you are choosing to put into it and take out of it, as opposed to relying on other people or relying on the people there. I feel for me, it's a, yes, people are cool, but I am still the different one, or I'm still the other one who isn't not from here kind of thing. And in countries where the culture is everybody's friends are the people they went to high school with and that's it, or the people they go to church with and that's it. And anyone outside, we're okay as acquaintances, you're okay as colleagues, but there's a certain distance that's always kept or maintained because you don't fit the criteria, because nobody can vouch for you, because you did not go to high school with them and you don't go to church with them and they don't know your whole family because you were not from here. And and I think sometimes a lot of is taken for granted, because those of us who are not from here don't have just family you're hanging out with every weekend and people just around that are just always around, and a community that's always around. Well, for those who are already here, that's always there. So it's fascinating, because a conversation came up once previously with someone who is from here. And she was asking me questions on like, oh, how have I been navigating the social scene, the dating scene, the friend scene, this sort of thing? Because here everyone insists that, oh, Ghanaians are so hospitable and they're so nice and etc. And I noted that, well, it's still a learning curve for us, because we're dealing with all of you as strangers. And the frame of reference of how we discern when someone is a friend or not is different. Like, it doesn't fully apply here. What you're wearing doesn't necessarily correlate with whether or not you have a job or not, or is that your car or not? Or if you're telling me you enjoy something, how do I vouch for that? Because you could just be saying it, same as I could just be saying anything too. And she mentioned like, oh, well, you foreigners, you always choose to hang out with the wrong people. You always choose like the bad characters to come and hang out with. And then you say all the people here are like that. And I noted too, I found that interesting that was the perception, at least, for what she had experienced with, I guess, foreigners. And the conversation, I noted in that conversation of like, but do you understand the other person's perspective, that person didn't know the person was bad? Like they're taking, like I noted for me, initially I was so eager to meet new people all the time. So anybody, oh, hey, possible new friend. Yeah, let's go to this cafe, or I met you at this event, or, like just being enthusiastic and eager and trying so hard to create new community and meet new people. And it's unfortunate that it does correlate with, you go through a whole lot of scammers at first, or a whole lot of people who are like, well, they know you're a foreigner, so they're trying to take advantage because they know that I don't know, or I don't know how to vouch for who I'm dealing with. And then it's almost like the pipeline or the trajectory is that if the person doesn't just run away after that, so they just stay, after a while, then the notion is, oh, you foreigners just like stay to yourselves. You don't really hang out with anybody, or you don't really. And it's like, but do you see the correlation though, that it's possible that person was burnt multiple times and then but doesn't necessarily want to be bitter about it, or doesn't want to generalize that everybody's like that, but gradually feel like, well, maybe it's just safer to, similar to how everyone else is like, it's just safer to stick to my friends from high school. It's safer to stick to my friends in church. So then foreigners also be like, well, then I guess it's safer to stick to yourself, or stick to this other clique that you found through some charity organization, because it's too, it sometimes is a bit too taxing or exhausting to continue being burnt over and over again. And so, and I don't think it's unique to just this country. I feel for foreigners who are living abroad, there is this dynamic of, there is a bit of a sacrifice happening. If in your home country, you have family reunions, barbecues, high school reunions, you got your soccer club, your book club, your dance club, you got, you got all of you have a solid community. You kind of do sacrifice that when you go abroad, because even though you will find nice people and you will create other hobbies and stuff, but I don't think it ever truly substitutes that community experience you had in your home country, in addition to the fact that your family is not with you, kind of thing. And you kind of end up just growing to accept that you kind of may possibly always be the other, or you may not always fully understand how others are perceiving you, especially if you're coming from another country that everyone perceives as privileged. So, you don't know how they define that privilege. Is it that, oh, okay, yeah, you're privileged, but you're still cool, so it's okay? Or, yeah, you're privileged, so there's a slight resentment or envy, even though you didn't do anything to them and they didn't do anything to you. And it's not your fault that the powers that be for these countries are doing what they're doing. But that's still, that perception is still put on you because technically you are representative of whatever your home country is doing or not doing. And that does play in every aspect of the so-called, how is it socializing in your foreign country? And at times it can feel like, for me, sometimes it feels like there's no interest in learning my culture. Like, because I'm the foreigner, I want to learn the culture of the country I'm in, right? So I'm the one asking the questions, wanting to learn and assimilate and stuff. But sometimes it can feel one-sided because it's like others are comfortable thinking my culture is what they saw on YouTube or what they're seeing in movies or music videos, as opposed to actually wanting to learn from a person who has lived in the US. What's it actually like living there? Or how do your values work or correlate due to you living over there? So I think sometimes it shows a bit of a gap of understanding or empathy sometimes with that. And I think maybe that's also where the bravery comes in, because I don't think it's about growing thicker skin because you don't care. Because for me, I always note it or feel it. But I think for me, I've grown to not take it as devastatingly personally. Like, it's not a personal insult to me if you want to put me in some box sort of thing. Because here also there's a colorism deal here too, of like, if you don't look a certain way, they will insist you're not Black kind of thing, which coming from the US is like, excuse me, like, what are you talking about kind of thing. But after a while, just being more accepting of meeting people where they're at, but also taking note of like, some people are really missing out by choosing not to reciprocate that acceptance too, beyond the surface level.
Yeah, I definitely see that. Yeah, and it's very different for you because I mean, obviously you're in Ghana, so it's like you would think, oh, you're Black, everybody else is Black, okay, so this should be fine, but it's very different. For me, it's a little bit more obvious because obviously I'm in China, so there's no way to mix up who the foreigner is. Like, I can't be like, and why don't you guys look like, come on. You got like a softball.
Yep.
So obviously, definitely, I feel it. It's expected, right? And for me, it's a little bit different because it's the added language barrier also. So even though who I'm working with, they can speak English, but obviously there's a difference if I knew the language versus not, right? And even though I know enough, like I said, enough Chinese and conversational Chinese to get by, but I'm not perfect. I'm not as fluent as I'd like to be, still learning. And so, of course, that can sometimes by default you feel kind of left out because they'll be talking and I only get some things that they're saying and I'm just like, oh, I can't really, and then there's other foreigners, but like you kind of wonder, should I just be with the foreigners or should I be more immersed in the culture? And I think the biggest thing I've seen is the difference between studying abroad here versus working here. Because when you're studying, obviously you're in a school with other foreigners, so they're all going through the same thing. So that kind of, in my experience, it makes people come together like that because, like, well, you're a foreigner and I'm a foreigner. We don't know what we're doing, so let's, kind of thing. So in that sense, but then it's like, why are you in another country then? Like, why are you in a different country? You're just gonna be with, all the foreigners. And whereas now I'm like the only foreigner where I'm one of the only foreigners of where I'm working, and so that is a change because I'm the only one that looks like how I look like, right? And everyone's mostly everyone's nice, but you have a difference people that are very nice, other people that are kind of neutral, don't really know how to react to you yet. They're very, most of them in the culture here too. Everyone's very polite, very kind. I haven't had any people like super like crazy rude to me or anything. But obviously it's different, and then And then for me, I don't know if people stare at you, though they probably don't stare at you the way that they stare at me, kind of
I
thing.
do get the staring, but yeah, it's probably different.
Yeah,
Yes.
you get the staring, but you're black. It's a little bit different. For me, it's like there's a bunch of Chinese people, so obviously people, and not in a rude stare. It's kind of like, what are you? I mean, and honestly, I don't know. Like, I'm from America, so I'm used to seeing different people than myself.
Exactly.
So it's very
That's
different
also
here.
actually that's a very big
Yeah,
thing of being from
exactly.
America. We are so used to an
Yes,
extreme form of diversity
yes, we
that I
see
didn't know it was
everything.
extreme. And then we're coming to our own countries that are a bit more, dare I say,
Yeah.
homogeneous. And it's like, what?
What?
Yeah.
And it's different. It's weird because for
Yes.
you it's all like everyone's black, different
Right.
hues, and then for me it's just Chinese. I'm the only black person,
Yeah.
whatever. And so you still get this feeling of like what, like when anytime I visit or I'm in Africa, I'm like, oh wow, everyone looks like me. What kind of
Mm-hmm.
thing?
Mm-hmm.
And then in China, it's like no one looks like me. Okay, like, and so you, of course, you get the staring, the kind of looking at me like, what is she doing? Okay. I mean, they're not rude, but they're just like. And then once they'd be like, "Oh wow, where are you from?" kind of thing, and they, of course, they don't know if I'm from Africa or I'm from America or whatever.
Right.
And some people obviously they'll ask questions. I'm already like a very open-minded person anyway, so like certain questions they ask that other people might perceive as rude, I don't. Sometimes I think they sometimes I ask a question that like they don't know about, so they're like, "Oh, how is it like this?" I'm like, "Oh, I thought." Is it like this in America or like what's going on there kind of thing? Um, so I'll answer best I can. And of course, and sometimes I'll make jokes. I'm American, so I make jokes sometimes about like America,
Mm.
and sometimes they're all kind of like awkward about it because they don't really know how to respond. And I'm like, all right, you guys, don't, you can't joke like I'm joking, okay? You know, and of course there's the kind of you don't know who, like, am I the first foreigner they've met or not?
Mm.
Of course, there's been other foreigners that sometimes misbehave in other countries, and
Yes.
sometimes that can reflect badly on someone like me who's like not being a very good, like very nice, very good. I'm not causing problems. And sometimes when I hear about that, I'm like, oh, so sometimes it's good. Sometimes it's good to be the only, like the first foreigner they meet. Sometimes not. But yeah, there's definitely a sense of I feel I didn't feel it as much as when I studied abroad because I think there were more students and foreigners around me going through the same thing that I was going through. Whereas now that I'm working here, it's first you're working here, so they're not going to hold your hand or anything,
Mm.
whereas they would more so as a study abroad, right? So you're kind of like, they're very nice, but everyone's just doing their own thing. And like there is some form of a loneliness that can come with it and feeling kind of left out because you obviously you're not part of the culture, right? And even though I
Mm.
know some things and they'll be like, "Ooh, you know that? Oh, wow, that's so cool." Like they're always surprised when I'm fine with eating the food. And I'm like, "Yeah,
Right.
I love the food," kind of thing. But there is that sometimes sense of like, no one is like doing anything, but you do feel a kind of like an other. It's very,
Yes.
it's very hard to not feel like an other. I'm not sure if that will change in time. I know there are other friends I have who are also foreigners, and it seems they're a bit more like able to acclimate better, or if the language is. I have other foreigner friends who are better at Chinese than I am, and I sometimes if I'm with them, I see that they kind of that is more that builds more of a connection, and I feel like language, even if you're a foreigner, hey, if you know the language, then the people will be like, oh wow, okay. So I think sometimes that helps. So I would hope that as I get better at the language, maybe it will decrease because once you know the language, I know language is a very big way to connect with people, right? Kind of thing. But I also know that everyone has their own perceptions of America and things like that, so it's very
Yes.
different. Um, and so yeah, so that's kind of I agree that it can be very like isolating sometimes, even if no one's like doing anything, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I mean, I haven't gone to I feel like I've yet to come into a deep discussion. Like, I mean, but the thing is, your discussion is kind of different though, because you're like America to Africa, and then like it's different because it's like you're black with other black people, but you're from
Right.
different places. But for me, I'm
Yes.
black and everyone is Chinese, and everyone
Mm.
looks different than I do.
Right.
So the conversations they would have would be different, right?
Right. Right.
Um, but yeah, so it's definitely that. I will say back to the bravery part. It's very brave to do that. because obviously it would be like, oh, why don't you just go back to America? Isn't it easier? Like, kind of thing. And in some ways it's not easier. In some ways it is easier, right? Obviously in America, I don't have to worry about language or culture stuff as much because I'm American, obviously. Whereas here, I always make sure to, I think everyone should do some research before you go to a country so you know not to offend anyone. Like certain gifts that you're not supposed to give, for example, or certain things you shouldn't say and things like that. I'm always open to learning and having people like, if anyone corrects my Chinese, I'm cool with it. Like, yes, like so I can be better and everything. And so so it's very it's definitely a learning curve. I would hope that as if I stay here much longer, it would get easier to kind of figure out where you fit, kind of thing, and like not feel as like, oh, I'm the other kind of thing. Although I always feel that way, obviously, because I obviously am, like, I feel like even if I was like outside looking in, I also would be like, who is this random Black person in this place? Like, kind of thing. It's funny because I even feel that way. Like, because sometimes like when I walk by, like little kids will be like, oh, Waigoren. And Waigoren means foreigner in Chinese. And so like little kids will be like, Waigoren. And like even me, if I see other foreigners, I'll be like, who's this foreigner? Why is there a Waigoren here? Why is
wow.
I'm even like, what? You stick out really bad. Like just like me. So that's always interesting. I have met other foreigners from other places, from like England or from Africa, or like, and they obviously have different like struggles too with the whole like the homesickness, and it's very different. And obviously the work culture, the work culture in America versus China versus Africa, they all work very differently. So getting used to that is kind of different. And it kind of it's just very different, but I would like to, travel more and stay abroad like longer, because I feel like with most things, sometimes like if you're there for too short of a time, you don't get the full picture of it. And then also there are some foreigners I hear of, like they can be in a place for 10 years and they haven't learned the language.
Right.
And they're, they just stay with the expats and the foreigners, and nothing wrong with that. I feel like it's definitely easier to stay with the other foreigners, right?
If
Obviously,
it works for you, it works for you.
It works for you, but I think that you kind of have to, in order to immerse in the culture more and get to know the people, you kind of have to hang out with the people that you are there in the country for,
exactly.
Kind of thing. Or at least have a mixture. Like I think it's good to have, like for me, I'm kind of like, it's good to have Chinese friends, but I also would want foreigners too, because there's certain things or issues I might go through that if I talk to a Chinese person about it, they won't understand, obviously, because they're from here. And then if I talk to someone who's a foreigner, they'd be like, okay, I get, and also it's also interesting to have like, because I have some friends that are like, they're from America or they're from Canada or something, but their parents are Asian kind of thing, or their parents are Chinese, or kind of thing. And that obviously is a different version of it too, right? Because then they're kind of like, kind of like you, Dagny, like going to Africa, but you're a Black American, kind of thing. And then they're Asian, but they weren't born there. And so it's a different, so yeah, so if you going abroad can be it's very different going abroad on your own. It can be kind of lonely, and I think what you said about people not understanding, I think a big thing is to be open-minded. Like if people don't understand, like, and hopefully they're not coming from like a harsh place, then you can try to explain, try to let them see your side of it, and be kind of gentle with it, because sometimes like people really don't know, or they just don't, they don't understand in the same way, that you would, kind of thing.
So then to wrap up, would you say, in your experience, would you recommend living and working abroad at some point in someone's life, for the person who's listening and possibly haven't done it yet?
Do it. I mean, at least like, okay, if you don't want to live for a whole year somewhere, I think at least 6 months, right? Because I do think it does open your mind. Even though I was already an open-minded person before I traveled anyway, like we've always been kind of open anyway, but traveling definitely opened my mind more in some good ways and in some bad ways, but I would say that it's nice to see how, as the saying goes, how the other half lives. And also I think it's good because we all know how the news and the media are, and we know how they say things, and they can twist things or make things seem a way that they're not. And I think if you travel to the actual place, you can get a better idea of what the truth is, and like, oh, okay, so that's why they do that, or oh, whoa, that's the nuance, and that's how, kind of how it is. And I think it does open your mind, and I think it can make you more, I would hope makes you kinder, more like open and kinder, and then to know that there's another side to every story, and it's not just people don't live like in a vacuum or live in little boxes. Like, not everyone is like the same, not, and also, like, I know people like to say everyone looks the same in Asia. Not everyone looks the same, okay? The same race, but all different faces, okay? So let's chill out with the stereotype, right? And also, yes, I think when you travel more or open more, it breaks down stereotypes.
Yes.
And we don't think everyone is in the same box. You won't put everyone in the same pot. Like for me, I know there's a difference between Korea and Japan and China, and like all these different places are not the same, very different. And and even if you don't know the language, I think you should at least be open to learning about it or learning about their culture or things like that. So so I would think it's worth it. It can be very lonely and very hard. It has its obstacles just like anything else, but I do think it's it's a big growth for me, and I'm curious to see like when I return to America, how my worldview or how I will view things differently, or how I would have changed, right? But like before pandemic versus after pandemic, right? And see what I would do from there. And what about you, Dagny? What do you think it has been worth it after all of this bravery and struggle, good things and bad things and improvements?
Right. I do think it's worth it. I do feel if you have the access or the opportunity, I think you should take it and really commit to it. It definitely takes you outside of your comfort zone. It builds, I think it does builds character. It really broadens your horizons, I think, in every aspect of your life. And yes, going to that of like, do you feel different when you return to your so-called home country? Yes, I definitely take note. Whenever I do visit back to the US, I do feel very different. I'm viewing my environment very differently. I think I've become even more confident in myself, I think, because as being Black people in the US has all other types of nuances and connotations, and we tend to carry ourselves a certain way, carrying certain things on our back. And being able to be out here where that's a nuance that I could actually put down or put to the side and actually just live as me as opposed to a box sort of thing. It's a really beautiful experience. Doesn't mean you can go back to the US and do anything, right? But you can't, but I think just for your inner self, it really does make a difference. And I think it does help to broaden our scope of understanding of the planet and of people, because it's true. I think every country has a certain system of propaganda about themselves and how they want their people to see other people. And we know the US definitely is the guru at that in some shape or form. So it definitely, yes, I already knew about the continent, the African continent, to an extent before coming to move here, not only because of family, but also I chose to study parts of Africa in college as well. But being here and getting to experience, because none of that really illustrated or showcased modern Africa or urban Africa. Right. It was mainly like ancient Africa, we were all kings and queens and, like this sort of thing. And like, oh, we're about to grow.
What about today?
But today, what is happening today? Outside of your donations for that one kid with a fly on their face, what else is happening today? And I'm just saying. So being able to spend this time where I've been living in modern urban Africa for 5 years, and it's really cool because I too, like you noted, where I maintain a mixture of, I am hanging out with people who are born and raised here, young professionals, they have their 9 to 5, dealing with whatever they got to deal with, as well as foreigners, and getting to see the different perspectives, similar struggles, different struggles, similar priorities and goals, different dreams and goals. And it's really beautiful. And it's something that is not always showcased outside of, oh, look, now everybody wants to listen to Afrobeat. but it's still not, you know what I'm saying? It's still not fully giving you the essence of like, urban modern Africa is actually quite different. And it's moving along possibly faster than you realize the rest of the world, which is really beautiful. And I feel it's a really beautiful and transformative experience if you're open to it. It is a healing experience if you're open to it, because I think the first few years can feel dicey or tension, because I feel for me, it was like there are certain aspects of yourself that need to be released now to fully embody this new chapter and this new experience in this new environment. So I do think it's worth it. The longer you can experience it, the better. So if you can push it 6 months to a year to 2 years, I think it's wonderful. Again, if you have the access and the opportunity and things work out in that way. But I would definitely recommend, if you can have a chapter of your life living and working abroad, I do believe it is worth it, and definitely it adds some spice and flavor to your memoir, your best-selling memoir. Yes.
Yeah. And also to add to that, I and especially with for you learning about Africa from a different stance. For China, it's been like different, right? Because one, I hadn't been to, I got interested, I think Chinese started in college, like years back when I was learning it before I'd ever gone to China. Mm-hmm. I was learning it for a few years, and then I stopped, and then I picked it up again, and finally went back to China, all of these things. And then learning about China and going to China before, I was able to go before the pandemic, and then I'm coming back after the pandemic. So obviously China was in the news a lot during the pandemic for obvious reasons that we don't have to go over, right? It was all over the news. So of course there was a lot of news about China, and then America's relations to China and relations with everybody else, and all of that stuff that was going on with the pandemic and everything. And so of course that would, since it was something I was interested in, it pushed me to do more do more research on China and like what China's about, and like the connections between things and all of that. And then finally, and then of course hearing all these different opinions about China and what the good things and bad things and all of this stuff. And then finally having to be here, it's very different working here or living here now, as opposed to like because the first time I came here was only for like 3 weeks, and then the next time was a lot more months after that. And it's very different from what you read in books or what you go through in a class. There's nothing that can really there's nothing that can substitute for going to the actual place. And this is coming from someone who I already, it's not like I had like a negative, I already had a positive view of China anyway, but reading about it and taking lessons and classes in China, I mean, in America, starting to learn Chinese in America, and then coming to China, and then the pandemic happened, and going back to America and taking online Chinese classes versus here, and then all of that. It's definitely very different. And I think that I agree with you, and that if you get a chance, you definitely should try it. And even if it's something you don't have to do, like, you have to move to a different country for 10 years or 20 years. Like, no, it's okay. You don't have to do that. Even if you do it that one time and then you have to go back home, or you do it one, at least it's something to do. And I think
it still will have a heavy influence on you.
Yeah, it definitely a big impact on you and everything. And I'm definitely curious, and I'm curious to see once I get much better at the language, I'm curious how that would change my perspective of things. And so I guess that of course, like always, we'd love to hear your comments about it. And have you traveled? Would you like to travel? Why haven't you? Why have you? What's the deal with that kind of thing? And and
this was a beautiful conversation. Thank you so much.
It was great.
Yes.
New things, interesting.
Great adventures.
Takes on it.
Yeah.
Might do there's so much information on this. We could do another podcast on this topic.
Indeed. So let us know, what else would you like to know? What other insight would you like to know about embodying the adventure of living and working abroad? Let us know, and we might incorporate that in another episode. So thank you so much for listening. We really do appreciate you. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast if you have not already. And in the show notes, as always, there's a link there for you to check out more information about the podcast and reach out to us. Thank you again. Take care, be safe, and we'll catch you on the next episode.
Yeah, stay healthy. Bye.
Bye-bye.